Kentucky is America's first western frontier, and no one knows it like Daniel Boone. He's forged a path into this pristine wilderness that settlers from the American colonies will soon follow.
Mighty Kentucky!
But Boone hasn't received a warm welcome from Kentucky's original inhabitants.
Go home. Stay there.
And holding on to this land may end up costing Boone the one thing he holds most dear.
Jemima!
A party of Cherokees and Shawnees have kidnapped Boone's teenage daughter, Jemima, and two of her friends. But with his daughter finally within his reach, every decision he makes could be the difference between life and death. And if he gives the warriors a chance, they'll kill the girls.
That's my father!
Daniel Boone is an American icon, a nearly mythical frontiersman who sets the bar for every pioneer and mountain man who follows.
Daniel Boone was literally a legend in his own time, a celebrity at a time when celebritydom didn't even exist.
Boone is always jumping ahead, jumping ahead, jumping ahead. And he always has to be moving out ahead of civilization.
But that restlessness epitomizes how we think about the American frontier, that these were restless, heroic individuals who were constantly feeling claustrophobia when civilization caught up with them and were moving off into a wilder place.
Boone had that indomitable American spirit, that love of freedom. He was always looking over the next hill.
At the age of 34, Daniel Boone is already a well-traveled hunter who has roamed colonial America from Virginia to Tennessee to Florida, seeking to make his fortune. By the winter of 1768, he's made a home for himself, his wife Rebecca, and their children in North Carolina. But he still longs for adventure. That's when an old friend, John Finley, re-enters Boone's life.
And just then it started to rain, and I had to run all the way home barefoot.
John Finley was a tinker. And so he's kind of like a Walmart on hoofback. He's trying to sell all manner of trinkets. He's trying to sell tea. He's trying to sell chocolate. But he appears at Boone's house one day.
Mrs. Boone, that was a fine meal.
Well, I certainly hope you liked it, old friend.
I did.
Just afraid we're not going to see too many more like it.
Why not?
Well, it's the valley. It's gone way too crowded. Too many people, too many mouths, and simply not enough game.
Well, if it's game you want, you know where to find it.
Kentucky.
Finley is one of the few Americans who have ventured into the trackless wilderness beyond the western edge of the British colonies.
In the 1700s, the western frontier wasn't the Rockies, it was the Appalachians. Daniel Boone grew up on this frontier, looking west, wondering what was out there, what kind of man you could become if you were only get to the other side of those mountains. For him, the other side of those mountains was Kentucky.
In Boone's day, they saw Kentucky radically different than we would. Kentucky was seen as the garden in the wilderness. It was the crown jewel of North America.
The rivers have never been dammed. The land has never been turned by a plow. This is the most sublime land in the world, a kind of a new Eden, a new paradise.
The great meadow. Boone. Beaver, deer, buffalo, all ripe for the taking.
Thank you, my love.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you. I gazed upon Kentucky with my own two eyes. Boone, I propose you and I go back together. We hunt for a season, maybe two. If we do that, we can make a fortune.
Yeah. Boone and Finley.
The two of us.
For Boone and Finley, going to Kentucky isn't just about adventure and exploration. They're embarking on what's known as a long hunt that could make them both wealthy men.
The term long hunter really describes a group of men who hunted for the market. And the market was deerskins because of the fashion demands in Europe. For leather knee breeches, for the leather padding of a saddle, for leather deerskin gloves.
They're not joking about the long part of a long hunt. And you're going out for a year or more, and you're not coming back until you have your annual income worth of hides that you can sell in the settlements.
There's one fellow named Joshua Fry, 5,000 deerskins he got in a year. He bought his entire farm in the Shenandoah Valley. So it was possible to get rich very quickly.
A few months after their fateful meeting, Finley leads Boone to the Cumberland Gap at the junction of modern-day Tennessee, Virginia, and Kentucky, one of the only passes through the forbidding Appalachians.
You're approaching the Cumberland Gap, and looming before you are this mountain range that you can't get through, and finally it appears. There's this yawning maw, this gap. The Cumberland Gap, known as the Warrior's Path. It had been there for hundreds of years. This is the path that Delaware, Shawnee, Cherokee would come through and attack each other and war upon each other. You would be leaving civilization and going into a dark and foreboding territory. And so it would be both triumphal and rather scary.
Despite the risks of going into Kentucky, Boone will not be deterred. The potential reward is too great.
Imagine what it must have looked like for Daniel Boone moving down off the ridge and into that land and realizing it's all here.
He's on a great adventure here. But there's no time for a lot of romantic thought. It's time to kill deer.
For long hunters, deer hunting isn't a sport. It's a business with a proven method for maximizing time and resources. Boone begins by establishing a central base of operations known as a station camp.
And if you think in the terms of a wagon wheel with the hub in the center, that would become their station camp.
From there, the men would split up in twos and threes and establish kind of a network of camps.
Somebody would cook, somebody would flesh out the hides, the rest would go out and hunt and come back. And you would do it in the spokes of the wheels. So they would shoot the deer out and about, they would skin it, they'd bring their hides back with them, back to the base camp.
And after months of work, Boone and his team have stockpiled a fortune in deerskins, worth tens of thousands of dollars in today's money. In all that time, they've had no contact with Native Americans. But that will soon change. The fearsome Shawnees have noticed the intruders in their hunting grounds. Now, a confrontation is inevitable. Boone is trespassing in land that doesn't belong to him, and he may not make it out alive. For 6 months, Daniel Boone has been hunting the wilderness of Kentucky without glimpsing the fierce Native American tribes who stalk its forests. But his presence hasn't gone unnoticed.
You men are my prisoners. Take me to your camps.
After decades of contact with colonial Americans, many of the warlike Shawnees have learned English.
Well, I'd be happy to.
And they know the value of the hides Boone's hunters have been gathering.
Boone is taken prisoner by Captain Will Emery.
Right this way, gentlemen.
He's a captain, according to a tradition among Native Americans of adapting anglicized honorifics like captain to denote themselves as brave warriors, equal to any white man in battle.
Yeah, when Boone is first apprehended, he understands he's in a tight spot. And so he kind of stalls for time.
He makes a lot of noise, hoping to alert his men to the presence of the Indians so that they'll grab their skins and flee.
Yep. Camp should be just up here a bit. Fortunately, we don't have much in the way of provisions, but you're welcome to what we do have. Always happy to share with Shawnee. Just trying to be friendly. You know, I was wondering when we were going to run into you, boy. Okay.
Gotta clear out. The Shawnee got Boone.
Well, I certainly do hate to disappoint you gentlemen, but I'm sure we could spare a couple of items, you know, to keep you warm in your travels. I don't think that should be a problem.
So Boone eventually leads Emery and his men back to the main station camp. And there, Boone finds that, yes, his men had indeed heard him and fled, leaving many skins behind.
Boone would realize the enormity of the situation that he was in. Once everything is confiscated, they literally have to start all over.
Captain Emery gives Boone a cheap gun so that he can survive his journey out of Kentucky and offers him fair warning about the penalty for returning.
Now, go home. Stay there. Do not come here anymore. For this is the Indians' hunting ground. And all the animals and skins and furs are ours. If you are so foolish as to venture here again, you may be sure that the wasps and the yellow jackets will sting you severely. Go. Go.
As you wish.
The restraint that the Shawnee would exhibit at times is kind of remarkable, because here you have someone who you know is not supposed to be there. The fact that you could walk away from that unscathed, it's a remarkable level of restraint.
Despite surviving a potentially fatal encounter with the Shawnees and their threat of retribution if he returns, Boone refuses to be intimidated. Instead, he remains in the wilderness of Kentucky, and this time he does so alone.
When Boone is robbed and he can't go back empty-handed, so he elects to stay longer and try to do it over again.
He has no horse, he has no dog, he has his rifle, and he's alone. It seems inexplicable that he wouldn't go back to the settlements and see his wife and children.
He called this the most melancholy time of my life when he was alone. So the real mystery is, why was Boone willing to do this for months at a time, alone? Was he thinking about, this is a place where my family can live? Think how happy we could be here. This is so magnificent and beautiful. That had to be part of it.
Boone was willing to stay and see what was out there, even at risk of his own life.
After 3 months exploring the pristine Kentucky frontier, Daniel Boone returns home with a crystal clear vision of the future. But Boone isn't the only American who sees the value of the rich lands beyond the Appalachians. Richard Henderson, a judge in North Carolina, wants to turn Kentucky into the 14th American colony, and he has his eye on land that the Cherokee claim as their hunting grounds.
Boone is a right-hand man in Henderson's operation. Boone's role is to help broker the deal, to help mediate.
In exchange for 10,000 pounds worth of trade goods, Cherokee elders grant Henderson an astonishing 20 million acres of unsettled land in Kentucky. But some of the younger chiefs and warriors aren't happy with the deal, and they vow to exact revenge on those who would take their homeland from them.
Once the treaty is signed, Boone and a group of men begin cutting a road through the Cumberland Gap, blazing a trail that will come to be known as the Wilderness Road.
Trailblazing in its simplest form, it's taking the axe and blazing off the side of the bark, forming a bare spot that's easily identifiable even in dim light, and by line of sight, you can follow the trail through the wilderness. That it becomes part of our American mythology, it becomes part of our symbol of this westward expansion of the hunter pulling the families and civilization a little bit farther west.
Whew, what a day.
Although Boone's trailblazers make good progress, their work doesn't go unnoticed.
Keep us alive a few more days, but I'm hoping there'll be more than that. Right? Hey, boys.
Hey, oh, I just heard the magic word, didn't I? Stew.
A vengeful war party descends on Boone's lightly armed workers. For his vision for Kentucky, but fighting for his life as well.
Whew, what a day.
Daniel Boone's mission to build a road into Kentucky receives a devastating blow when native warriors attack his camp.
Which tribe attacks Boone's party is, but it's an indication that treaties alone are not some kind of shield that will protect all settlers for all time. All it takes is one committed band of Indians to decide that they don't like what they're seeing.
It's Boone's second grim warning to leave Kentucky. But remarkably, he presses forward yet again, instead of retreating.
It's an early example of the type of leadership that he demonstrated, the way that he was able to get people to buy in to a vision of something better that awaited them just over the hill.
Less than 2 weeks after the attack, Boone leads his exhausted but jubilant men to the banks of the Kentucky River.
Kentucky! The mighty Kentucky! Woo! Yeah!
This site will become the location of one of the first permanent settlements in Kentucky, named Boonesboro in his honor.
Boone returns quickly to North Carolina, and by about August, he brings his wife, Rebecca, and he brings his daughters.
The little yellow flowers, they look like strawberries.
July 14th, 1776 in Boonesboro. News of the Declaration of Independence has yet to reach the frontier, so for all concerned, it's just another lazy Sunday.
Oh, Fanny, when we get home, I wanted to show you a new pattern. I think you're ready.
After Bible study, Boone's daughter Jemima, along with her best friends Betsy and Fanny Calloway, take a canoe out on the Kentucky River.
Jemima and her father have a very deep relationship. And in some ways, Jemima was a perfect composite of both parents. She's rather tall and stately like her mother. On her father's side, she has that free-wheeling, adventuresome spirit.
Like Jemima, the Calloway sisters are daughters of one of Boonesboro's founders and were raised on the frontier.
The women of the frontier could do about everything that the men did. They could shoot flintlocks. They could skin deer. They could mold bullets. So life was oftentimes very, very hard and very, very arduous, but that's all they knew.
But as the girls enjoy their day on the river, they have no idea that they aren't alone.
We went left, right, Penny?
Hanging Maw is a formidable Cherokee chief who sees the Boonesboro settlers as intruders and enemies.
Perhaps we should
Discovering the three young women alone on the river, Hanging Maw attacks without warning.
Of course, the girls shriek and scream. This is heard back at Boonesboro, a couple hundred yards away.
Penny, stop! Penny, stop! Stop!
Take all your hair.
Stop!
Cut all your hair.
But Hanging Maw's attack isn't just a random event.
Tie them.
It's retaliation for what he sees as a hostile incursion into Native American territory.
Betsy, Fanny, be quiet.
The girls are kidnapped because they're in enemy territory.
I think that if you're the Shawnee or the Cherokee and your lands are being occupied by these strangers, you're going to have to get their attention in one way or another. They're going to have to make white occupiers pay a price.
When you've got three helpless captives out there, you could use these as a bartering chip, as a tool of negotiation.
Since he first came to Kentucky, Boone has been warned that he will suffer the consequences if he doesn't leave. Now, those predictions are coming true.
They're gone. They're gone.
His own daughter has been taken captive.
Jemima!
Frontiersman Daniel Boone has led American settlers, including his own family, into the wilds of Kentucky. But despite a formal treaty, a party of Shawnee and Cherokee warriors has attacked those settlements and kidnapped 3 women, including Boone's daughter, Jemima. Knowing that hours and even minutes could mean life or death for the captives,
Go get the boys. Oh, come on.
Boone instantly sets out in pursuit. But the captive women have already been dragged nearly a day's march into the trackless wilderness.
Jemima and the Calloway girls are not shrinking violets. These aren't pampered city girls. These are girls who've been raised in the frontier. Now, Jemima knows that their only hope is her father, finding them. So she and the Calloways begin to take steps to make sure that'll happen.
What is wrong?
My foot is on fire. I would rather die than suffer any further.
Nursing an injured foot from an earlier accident, Jemima tries to slow their progress and give her father time to catch up by pretending she can no longer walk.
Jemima!
Get up. If you wish to live, you must walk. Walk.
But the feisty young frontier woman refuses to be intimidated.
You don't remember me, do you? I was smaller then, when you came to see my father.
You tell me, who is your father?
Daniel Boone. These are my sisters. Father will be anxious to see us back home.
Boone. We did pretty good by old Boone this time, innit? For your feet. Put them on. Now you can walk. Boone.
Despite her bravado, Jemima's made a mistake, because Hanging Maw now knows exactly how valuable his captives really are. Miles behind, Boone's tracking skills are tested to the limit as he desperately tries to catch up.
Boone here is at his finest. He shifts into warrior mode. The Shawnees don't know what they've reckoned with here.
Look what we got here.
He's looking for that turned over leaves, the turned over dirt. When he's following his daughter in the warrior party, he's hunting. But now instead of hunting for deer or bear or elk or buffalo, he's hunting people.
Yeah, they've been through here. They come through here. Come on, let's go.
There's nobody better than reading the sign on the forest floor than a woodsman like Daniel Boone. That's for sure.
Come on, right there.
As the first day of the chase ends, Boone is gaining ground. But after miles of hard marching, both parties must rest for the night.
Sit.
Not so tight. Ow!
Stop!
Leave her alone.
Not so
Stop.
tight.
Clam tight.
With no idea where her captors are taking her, Jemima's mind turns to thoughts of escape. And the knife she remembers is in her pocket. Tonight, escape is impossible. She can only hope her father can find her before it's too late. Hanging Maw sets out again at dawn. Its destination is the Licking River, where a large war party of Shawnees await. And if he reaches them, his prized captives will be beyond rescue. Boone soon finds the Indians' camp from the previous night.
Still warm. Still warm.
But just outside the abandoned camp, the trail abruptly goes cold. No footprints, no broken branches, it's like they disappeared.
Boone's not quite sure. There's a dilemma. Have they split up? Have they switched directions? Are they backtracking? Are they doubling back?
Which way?
I don't know.
You lost the trail?
Their situation is grim. Boone's daughter is miles ahead in the wilderness and getting farther out of reach every minute. If Boone doesn't make the right choice, right now, he'll lose his best and last chance to rescue his daughter before she slips from his grasp forever. After the trail of the war party holding his daughter captive grows cold, Daniel Boone faces a critical choice. Spend valuable hours trying to find the trail, or trust his frontiersman's instincts and predict where the warriors are heading.
Which way?
I don't know.
This is his final exam. This is his daughter at stake here. This is his bloodline. This is the jewel of his eye. He's got to get it right. There's two elements in here. There's the ability to read the sign in the forest floor. But the other part of the equation is the knowledge in the head. It's like you'd follow deer. You know what the deer's likely to do. You know where they tend to go.
You lost the trail?
Come again?
I said you lost the trail?
Now you listen to me, Sam. Makes no difference. It's clear where they're going, and you know that. So we need to head to the Shawnee towns, and we move as fast as we can. You understand me?
All right.
And we'll find them. We will find them. I will find them. Come on. Come on, Sam.
So when he's saving his daughter, it's the same way. I know where these paths go. I can cut over here and cut them off and wait for them to show up because I understand the game that I'm after.
Miles ahead of Boone, Jemima is doing her best to leave signs that her father could track.
Jemima Boone, she's been breaking branches from the hemlocks, or maybe the laurel.
And Betsy Calloway is trying to leave a trail as well.
They've been taking bits and pieces of their chemises and their petticoats wherever they could and discreetly leaving little pieces of material around. Betsy Calloway, she's wearing shoes with cork heels. She's been digging her heels into the ground.
But the captive women are beginning to press their luck too far.
Please. No! Ah! No! Ah! Let go! Ah! Please!
Give me your shoes. Your shoes.
No! What are you doing? No, please! Ah! Ah! Let go of her! Stop!
No more.
Having given up trying to regain the trail, Boone can only pray he's guessed correctly about Hanging Maw's destination.
Daniel Boone knows what his daughter is capable of. He knows that they're trying to help him find them.
But just a short while later, Betsy Calloway's fiance, Samuel Henderson, finds a scrap of her dress, proving Boone's hunch was correct.
Hey, Boone, come here. Hey, this is a piece of Betsy's dress.
Look at that. She's alive. She's alive. We know that much, at least. We just said we make all the progress we can before nightfall, huh, boys? Yeah. Come on.
But he also knows that time is running out, that these girls could be lost if he doesn't catch them within the next day or so.
As the second day of the chase ends, Hanging Maw is confident he's eluded any pursuers. and will soon reach the Shawnee towns, where not even Daniel Boone can chase him.
Not yet.
Hanging Maw and this band of Shawnee and Cherokee treat the girls very curiously. They're very kind. They're very accommodating. Oftentimes at night, he would comb through her hair.
It'll be fine.
Where are you taking us?
Tomorrow we'll join more Shawnee. Then we'll go to Shawnee towns. Boone is a fine hunter, but he cannot follow us.
Father said you were a friend. He'll forgive you if you return us back safely.
If he is still alive. Already there are Cherokees Alagi on the river. Soon, it won't be safe for whites in Kentucky. Eat. Eat. You need to be strong.
Two days after kidnapping Jemima Boone and Fannie and Betsy Calloway, Hanging Maw believes he's escaped any pursuers who may have come after him.
Now we can eat. Soon we will find more Shawnees.
But Hanging Maw has made a potentially fatal mistake by underestimating the determination of Daniel Boone.
Yeah, they've been through here. Let's go, we're close. Come on, boys.
Boone sees a freshly killed buffalo. The blood is still trickling from the neck of this buffalo. The tongue is gone, the hump meat is gone. And so Boone knows they're drawing near.
I reckon they're gonna stop soon. Cook up this hump. Yeah. We're gonna keep quiet. Nobody's gonna lay a finger on their trigger until you hear my signal. You understand it?
Now certain they'll come across the war party soon, Boone proceeds with caution. And he's proved correct when Henderson, scouting ahead, finally sees Hanging Maw, the warriors, and all three captive women.
It's them.
And the girls?
They're alive. Let's get them.
Let's move in.
The chase is finally over, but actually rescuing the girls will be the most dangerous challenge yet.
Boone was in a tight spot here, and so you had to act quick. Had the captors known of the presence of Boone and his men, there's no doubt the girls would have been put under the tomahawk. silence is shattered by the sound of gunfire. It all just breaks loose.
Hanging Maw is completely surprised, but his braves put up a spirited fight. Thanks to Boone's decisive action, all 3 captive women are rescued unharmed.
It's over in 30 seconds. It's a very emotional moment, very, very poignant.
Gave us quite a scare, Jemima. But I suppose that's my fault. I'm just glad you're back.
Despite the ordeal of his daughter's abduction, Daniel Boone remains in Kentucky, leading America's journey into the wild frontier.
During his lifetime, Daniel Boone was well aware of the dramatic stories that were being told about him. And he'd be the first to remind people that he himself was just a common man.
Theodore Roosevelt saw Daniel Boone as a fabulous and authentic American hero.
Common man, though he may have been, he ended up one of the most celebrated frontiersmen, one of the most famous Americans.
And Theodore Roosevelt believed that our greatness as a people stemmed from the character set, the gumption, the hardihood, the willingness to face extraordinarily difficult challenges that he saw in Daniel Boone.